Now, the Big Ten has not announced its tiebreakers, but on Wednesday, the SEC announced its tiebreakers for the conference championship game. Because remember, this is the first divisionless season in the SEC since 1991. It's the first divisionless season since they created the championship game, which started in 1992. And they had to figure out how to break ties, because you could have ties for number one, you could have ties for number two, and it could get very complicated because with 16 teams, not everybody's playing everybody. The schedules are unbalanced. They're different. You have to figure out a way to break ties. So the SEC has now devised a set of tiebreakers. The last one is hilarious, and if we ever get to it, it's going to be Armageddon. But let's just go through these right now. The first tiebreaker, obviously, head-to-head competition among the tied teams. Like, that one works great. If you get a situation where, say, Georgia and Texas are tied at the top, they both have a 7-1 SEC record, well, then all you got to do is look at the Georgia-Texas game. Who won? Okay, great. Now, it's not going to be that simple, because if that were the case, well, they just play again in the SEC championship game because they'd be number one and number two. Let's say they were tied at number two at 6-2 in the conference. Well, you could do that and then pick the one that won the head-to-head matchup, and they go to the game. That makes perfect sense. Record versus all common conference opponents among the tied teams. This is where it'll get a little weird. Like, this is where Kentucky could help decide who plays for the SEC championship. If three tied teams happen to all play Kentucky and Kentucky happen to beat one of them. Next one. Record against the highest/best placed common conference opponent in the conference standings and proceeding through the conference standings among the tied teams. So you find the common opponent who had the best record. Did it beat any of them? That's actually not going to happen that often. It sounds good, but these are ones that they're probably going to get past, because usually the tied teams beat all the other teams and lost to really good teams, and they probably didn't all play each other. So this sounds good, but it's going to be harder. This is the one I like the best because it basically is a schedule strength argument. Cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among the tied teams. This is the one that hopefully will break the tie every time. This is the one they hopefully have to stop at. And basically it is, you played these 8 conference games. This was the winning percentage of your 8 conference opponents. The teams with the toughest schedule will go to the SEC championship game. That feels like a fair way to do it. That feels like a fair way to break the tie. And I would imagine in most situations, that's what will break the tie. The next one, and I had to go deep into the PDF that the SEC put out to figure out how all this works. Capped relative total scoring margin versus all conference opponents among the tied teams. This one's weird. It's not necessarily just scoring margin. It's capped relative scoring margin. So what does that mean? It essentially means, how did you perform against this team based on how this team performed against everybody else? How was your margin of victory different percentage-wise? And so the way you calculate it, essentially, this is where the cap comes in, is if that team typically gave up 21 points a game, if that team averaged giving up 21 points a game in conference play, and you scored 42 points against them, then your offensive margin percentage is 100%. And that's the most it could ever be. Like, whether you scored 42 or 62, it's still 100% because you've reached 100% of 21. So that's where the cap comes in. It's kind of a sliding scale. It's not, well, everything past 35 points doesn't count. It's basically everything past 100% of the average, double the average. That's the cap. So yeah, there was math involved. I was not told there would be math involved. As you guys know, this is a bad at math show. But I think I've figured that out. I think I understand it. I hope they don't have to get to it because I don't really want to have to explain it again. But if they get to that one and it still doesn't break the tie, and again, that's going to break the tie most of the time because I don't think those numbers are going to be equal. But if they somehow were, you get to letter F, random draw of the tied teams, which is essentially their version of meet at a truck stop and flip a coin, which is very famously happened in Texas high school football, where you decide who goes to the playoffs, truck stop, coin flip. I hope they never get to that, but if they do, I hope they televise it. So they actually had to write out the procedure for the random draw, and it's amazing. Go Black 45 in the chat. F is for freak out. Yes, F is for. It would be amazing. And I'm telling you right now, if it happened, just for the purposes of keeping everybody on the up and up, we got to televise this thing. So I'm going to read to you from the SEC's PDF how they're going to do this if they ever get to the random draw, which, again, we've been through the other tiebreakers. The chances of this are very slim. But let's say you've got teams tied, 2 teams tied, no head-to-head game. Every other thing has been tied, and this is for the second spot in the SEC championship game. Here we go. Each tied institution's athletic director will join a video conference with the commissioner or his or her designee. During the video conference, there's Greg Sankey. So Greg Sankey, commissioner, would be presiding over this video conference. During the video conference, each tied institution's name will be visibly placed into a drawing. It does not specify where there's going to be a hat or a bucket or what. If there are 2 or more teams tied for one spot in the conference championship game, then the commissioner or his or her designee will draw one name. The first name that is drawn wins the random draw and is placed in the conference championship game as the away team. If there are 3 or more teams tied for 2 spots in the conference championship game and a random draw is needed to determine both participants in the SEC championship game, then the commissioner or his or her designee will draw 2 names. The first name drawn is placed in the conference championship game and will be the home team. The second name drawn is also placed in the conference championship game and will be the away team. If this actually happened and you televised it, it would be the greatest thing that has ever appeared on the SEC network. Stephen Wilson has made rules for the gas station coin toss if we want to do it that way. This gas station coin toss has to be at night, and the station has to have a couple flickering lights about to go out. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Running on empty in the chat. Sorting hat, just like Harry Potter. Yes, I love it. Instead of Gryffindor, you get Oklahoma. Or the sort of the sorting hat's going to be like Booba Suna. It would be so good. This would be amazing. Yes. The SEC sorting hat is an idea that really this could make millions. They sell those SEC belts for like $200 a pop. Can you imagine an SEC sorting hat for all those nerds out there? Me included. We're not even going to get into it. This is big digression, but I found out I'm actually a Hufflepuff. It's embarrassing. But, I mean, imagine the SEC sorting hat. Roll Tide! Go Big Orange! Go Black in the chat. Make it a greasy, empty KFC bucket. Only if KFC is willing to buy major sponsorship in the SEC. SEC sorting hat is the way to do this. You guys are the best because I was thinking we move this thing to Buc-ee's, but SEC sorting hat, choosing the teams for the SEC championship game is exactly the sort of thinking we need. The sort of outside the box thinking that gets stuff done, that gets massive ratings. This is what we want. We'll find out if this ever happens. But they probably won't televise it, which would suck. They'll be like, hey, we did it. It's going to be Texas and LSU. That's no fun. Don't do that. Make it an event. Oh, I cannot wait. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.